Chapter 2. M.K. Gandhi, Lawyer. One day, Sheikh Makhtab and I went down to a quiet place by the river. He brought cooked goat's meat with him. It was the first time I saw meat because all my family were vegetarians. I must eat this so I can save my country, I thought to myself as I bit into the meat. It was hard as leather, but I ate it all, and I immediately became ill. That night I had a nightmare. I dreamed a live goat was crying inside my stomach. But I decided I must continue to eat meat. So every few weeks I met Sheikh Makhtab in secret places. He brought meat dishes and I began to enjoy them more and more. Of course, my parents didn't know about this. I didn't go to temple anymore, and they didn't know about this either. Things became even worse. When I was 15, I stole some gold from my older brother, but I felt terrible about it later. I finally decided to write a letter to my father and tell him everything. My father was ill in bed. I brought him the letter and waited for his answer. He read it and began to cry. He said nothing, but tore up the letter and turned over in bed. I sat near him and cried too. After this, I decided to change and become a better person. I bought a boat ticket, a tie, a short jacket, and enough food, mostly sweets and fruit, for the 3-week journey to England. I was not yet 18 when I left. Ba stayed home with our 2-year-old son, Harilal. It was very hard to say goodbye to them. In England, my new university friends all ate meat. There were no other vegetarian students there. If you don't eat meat, you'll destroy your health, they explained. It'll also be difficult to become part of English society. I said nothing, but I kept my promise to my mother. I tried to adapt to my new life and become a real English gentleman. I bought new suits from the best shops in London. I wore a top hat, a white collar, and a silk shirt. I carried leather gloves and an elegant cane. I even asked my brother to send me a gold watch chain from India. I tried to adapt to English culture. I took dancing lessons, but I couldn't keep the rhythm. Then I decided to learn to play the violin, but I wasn't good at that either. Finally, I took lessons in public speaking, but this was also unsuccessful. It was a very depressing time for me. After 3 months, I decided I couldn't live like this anymore. I'm an Indian, and I'll always be an Indian, I thought. I decided to spend less money. I noted very carefully all my expenses for food, clothes, stamps, bus fare, newspapers, and books. I lived with a family for some time, and then I took a room about half an hour's walk from the university. I walked 7 to 10 miles a day. This way I saved money on buses and also got some exercise. I cooked my own breakfast of cereal and hot chocolate. For lunch I went to my favorite vegetarian restaurant. Dinner was bread and hot chocolate. I became a member of a vegetarian club and began to change my diet even more. I didn't eat sweets, eggs, or any food made from eggs anymore. I began to write articles for a magazine called Vegetarian. This helped me to improve my English and also gave me more confidence. I met some religious men and began to read the Bible and Hindu religious books. Slowly, I began to develop my ideas about nonviolence. I later taught these ideas to all of India. It was the beginning of my lifelong efforts to live a more disciplined life. I started my studies in England in November 1888 and became a lawyer in June 1891. I had no trouble passing my final exams. The day after I graduated, I returned to India. I wasn't happy in England and I didn't want to spend one extra day there. Chapter 3. Back in India. From the minute I came home, nothing went well. When I arrived in Bombay, my family met me at the boat. My brother, Laxmidas, had some very sad news. I'm sorry to tell you this, Mohandas, but our dear mother is dead. She died when you were in England, but we decided not to tell you until you came home. We know how much you loved her. I just stood there. I was shocked, but I didn't cry. I only cried later when I was alone. For a long time after that, I thought about my mother on many occasions. What would she say about this? Or, Mother really liked doing that. The best thing at home was my wonderful son, Harilal. When I returned from England, he was very happy to get to know me again. My older brothers also had several children, so in my first few months in India, I played with them and took them all on long walks. It was the only activity I enjoyed. Our second son, Manilal, was born in 1892 and our family grew. I'm sorry to say I was still horrible to my dear wife, Ba. I fought with her all the time. One day I even sent her away from my family's hometown, Rajkot, back to her parents' home in Porbandar. But mostly I felt bad because I couldn't earn any money for us. That was because I was a terrible lawyer. The local lawyers in Rajkot were much better than I was. They knew Indian law better than I did and asked for less money. When I finally understood this, I left my family and went to study Indian law in Bombay. I opened a small office there and waited for clients to come, but nobody came. It was a difficult time. Finally, my first client arrived. I didn't want to lose him, so I asked him for only 30 rupees. It was a simple case, but I prepared it very carefully. It was my first appearance in court, so I was very nervous. "Please stand up," the clerk said on the first day of the trial. The judge walked into the courtroom and sat down. He looked down at me over his glasses, like a bird about to catch a mouse. "Begin," he shouted. I knew I must get up and defend my client. I looked at my notes one last time and stood up, but still I said nothing. "Begin," the judge repeated. I opened my mouth to talk, but nothing came out. I drank some water, but it didn't help. I just stood there like an idiot. The people in the courtroom looked at me and began to talk and laugh at me. I felt terrible. "Aren't you feeling well?" my client whispered to me. "No, I'm fine," I whispered back. "Then talk," he said, a little angry. "Everybody is waiting for you." Again, I tried to talk. I knew exactly what to say, but nothing came out. After a few minutes, I sat down. I was humiliated. Finally, the clerk announced a new day for the case, and my client got himself a different lawyer. I, of course, returned his money. This was a very difficult moment for me. The truth is, I've always been afraid of a courtroom. I'm a very shy person, and I find it hard to talk in public. I finally understood that I had a real problem. How can I ever be a lawyer if I can't speak in court? I thought to myself. Things became even worse. My brother, Laxmidas, imagined I was going to do great things when I came home and bring riches and fame to the family. He paid for all my studies and I owed him everything. So I tried to help him, but I couldn't do that either. Laxmidas was the secretary to the future king of Porbandar. He hoped to become the next prime minister of this little state like our father and grandfather. But he made a mistake and fought with a British political agent. Since I knew the agent from my days in London, Laxmidas asked for my help. "Please talk to him, Mohandas," he asked. I didn't know the agent very well, but I decided to try. The agent was very cold. "If your brother has a problem, he should come and talk to me," he said. I couldn't be quiet. I talked and talked, but he didn't listen to me. He became very angry. "Go away now," he finally shouted. So in the end, I made things even worse for my brother. This was another problem for me. I didn't know how to talk to important people. I thought logical arguments were enough, but they weren't. It's very important to speak politely to these people and tell them how wonderful they are. It's very hard for me to do that, especially if I don't think they're so wonderful. Since my career as a lawyer was not successful, I looked for other kinds of work because I really needed money. I tried to get a job as a teacher in a school in Bombay, but they didn't want me. I was becoming desperate. Then I discovered I could write petitions to government offices. Many Indian people couldn't read or write and wanted my help with this. So I did that for 300 rupees a month. It wasn't a lot of money, and it certainly wasn't much fun, but at least I had a job. But then something exciting happened, and I was forced to make an important decision. A Muslim businessman from Porbandar offered me a job for a year to fight a legal case for him in South Africa. I thought it over for a while and then decided to take the job because I wanted to find a new direction.